Thank you for coming. Welcome to Naples. My name is Dougal Thompson from The Economist, and I will be moderating the session tonight. We're going to pack quite a lot into this 2 hours between now and 7:30, so we'll get cracking, although a couple of our speakers haven't arrived yet. They are on their way and they will join us, but we want to get started so we can hear from everybody, because we've got a plurality of voices and perspectives that we want to bring in to the discussion. I will start by giving a very brief context as to why I'm here, and it might correspond to some of the reasons why you're here. I'm from The Economist. The Economist, you know it probably as a magazine that comes out once a week, and what it tries to do is report on change. The changes that are happening around the world, the changes that have happened over the last 7 days mainly, but also the changes that are coming, the big transformations that are over the horizon that you need to know about. Now, where is change happening? It's happening fastest in cities. I think you know that, yeah? And the thing that fascinates me about this change is its speed and its scale. And in Western Europe, it's easy to miss out on a really proper appreciation of that. And it's only when you go to high growth markets and you talk to people in Lagos, for example, about urbanization that you realize the size and the complexity of the challenge that this massive growth of cities poses for everyone, for society, and above all, for the people that are supposed to be governing those societies on a city level, the mayors, on a regional level, and on a national level. It's not just the speed and the scale of that mass migration, though. It's the sheer complexity of what a city is. You think about what a city is. It's complex. It involves houses and shelter, but it also involves power, electricity, fresh water. It involves jobs and livelihoods and economics, healthcare provision, education provision. Cities are really complex things. They're complex organisms that bring lots of different trends and technologies together. And we are all actors in this urban drama. I mentioned that the job of the mayor is a really difficult one, and they can't do it alone. Policymakers can't manage sustainable urban transformation on their own. They need input, collaboration, and help from the private sector and from civic society. And I imagine that one of the things that brings you here, and I hope it does, is to explore the possibilities for collaboration, for alliance, finding ways to align the interests of the policymaker with the interests of business, which is ultimately to make money, and the interests of grassroots community activists, which is, I suppose, to make their communities better places to live for everyone. You're either horrified by this mass urbanization and wake up screaming in the middle of the night thinking, my goodness, there's going to be 40 million people living in Lagos in 2050, or you might see it as a great opportunity, a way to rethink existing old 20th century or even 19th century models about transport, about job creation, about education. We can think big, progressive thoughts because the size of the challenge demands it. Now, we're here mainly tonight to talk through a very nice, neat, concise manifesto for change. A lot of people have spent a lot of time thinking about this challenge of urbanization and trying to distill some ideas into a workable manifesto. And we're going to hear from some of the architects and the actors behind this manifesto tonight. Do the ideas stack up? Are you satisfied with them? It's going to be your opportunity to quiz the people that have created this and put them on the spot and challenge them. Is it workable? Let's see. That's about it for my introduction. I just wanted to say that I'm happy that the organizers of this event have called it the World Urban Forum, not the World Urban Congress or the World Urban Conference. Because if you think about what a forum is, or was, it was the public space in a city where citizens came to exchange, to discuss, to debate, to argue, and try and resolve what was the right thing for that community to do. And there's no better place to recreate that spirit of the forum than in Italy. So I'm happy that the event is taking place here in a great Italian city of Naples. Okay, that's it by way of a preamble, other than to say it is a forum. I do want you to play a part this evening. Have a think already about questions that you would like to leave with an answer to. What's keeping you awake at night when you think about this mass urbanization that the planet is experiencing? You've got one question, you might have several questions. You can either ask them here to our panel, or at the very least, seek out your peers, the people that are here, and talk to them about it. Because I hope that you're here like me to share and to learn primarily. Okay. We've got a diverse panel of experts we're going to be hearing from, a lot of different perspectives, and we're going to get the ball rolling with the voice of youth, progressive voices of youth, Ed from Brazil. Edenilson Ferreira dos Santos, to give him his full title, is a youth representative. I should say that I'm not going to go into massive biographical detail about our speakers tonight because you've got that information, and also I'm more interested in hearing the ideas and opinions of these people rather than reading their biographies. So Ed, I'm going to start with you and invite you to say a few words about why you're here and what you want this group to focus on, and the key messages that you want to put out. Some of you, I hope, will have your headphones that you can listen to if you want instantaneous translation, so please make the most of that opportunity. Ed, let's start with you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Ed, sit tight for a moment. I'd forgotten that we've got a video to begin to set the scene, so we're going to watch that video first. Ed.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I would like to thank UN Habitat for the invitation to participate in the discussion and for the opportunity to be part of the Youth Advisory Board. I live in the city of Santo André, located in the metropolitan region of São Paulo, Brazil. I was born on a coffee plantation in the countryside. When I was 2 years old, my father died, and my family was forced to migrate to city looking for work, looking for survival. In the city, my family paid rent in a formal neighborhood for as long as we could. But when it was not possible anymore, we bought a shack in a favela, a slum. As a teenager living in the slum, I saw what living on the margin of social policies does to people. I learned the meaning of social exclusion and the class prejudice. But consider yourself victim does not to overcome this conditional. Learning from experience showed me that the only way to overcome these challenges to face them. The neighborhood where I lived was a risky area, with a polluted stream that ran past the houses, and no formal water, and sewage line or pavement. The first time we organized a community meeting to fight for neighborhood improvement, I had to speak with a microphone and loudspeakers on top of a truck. I was 16. I remember it like it was yesterday. My legs were shaking just like they are now, speaking from top of you. When I was 18, we created a residence association that organized the movement for decent housing in the neighborhood. Today, I am the president of the Slum Dwellers movement in my city. However, many of these housing projects lack green space in common areas. The youth do not know our history, even though their parents worked and longed hard to ensure decent housing for their family. So, in 2009, we created the Young Environment Leaders Project with support from the UN Habitat Youth Fund. We sought to engage young people in community service through concrete actions, such as transforming abandoned areas by painting murals and creating green space. These are just some examples of what we did. So tonight, I wish to remind everyone here that it is important to include the youth in decision-making process at all levels of society. Levels of violence against youth are shockingly high in my country, and education, health, and work opportunities are still insufficient. Many youth are disenchanted about the value of their participation in society. But still, we are idealists. We believe in a better world, and therefore we have to build this better world now. I want to leave you with an invitation to youth everywhere. Occupy the spaces of discussions in your cities. Say what public policies need to be developed. Get involved in decisions. We need youth as agents of transformation of our cities. Thank you.
Excellent. Ed, well done. Bravo, your community's very lucky to have you. You've traveled a long way to be here. I don't think you win the prize for the person that's traveled the longest. That might be Lucinda. Over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Lucinda. I'm from Australia. So, yes, it was a 36-hour journey to get here. There are some other Australians in the room too. I'm representing Asia Pacific on the UN Habitat Youth Advisory Board, but I'm also a landscape architect, which means I design public spaces, particularly public spaces in communities facing social exclusion in the Asia Pacific region. But today I want to share with you briefly some of the challenges, the stories, and the really bold initiatives that we're seeing taken by young people around Asia Pacific. And from that, I want to share with you what is my 1 minute of change. So I want to particularly, I guess, to start, acknowledge the role that UN Habitat is playing in supporting young people already. We've seen this through the creation of the World Urban Youth Forum, which was held yesterday, and also through the Opportunities Fund for Urban Youth-led Development, of which Edgy was a recipient, which is really exciting. And these initiatives are really important because right now on this planet, almost 3 billion people are young people. That's 3 times the population of China. It's larger than the population of India. Collectively, young people are the largest tribe on the planet. So if there was ever a time to consider the role of young people in the design and planning of cities, it's now. Just to illustrate how this happens, I want to just quickly share a story of a friend of mine. So just imagine that you're 21. You're a young mother living in a slum in Phnom Penh in Cambodia in the banks of the Mekong River. The community floods every year. Your houses have to be rebuilt. Youth unemployment is high. But the main issue is that the community is facing threat of eviction. The neighbouring slum was bulldozed just last year, and everyone's living with a sense of fear and uncertainty. People like Shrenyat, who's this person in this story, this colleague and friend of mine, are the face of the 21st century city, a young woman living in a slum. We find people like Shrenyat living in every country, in every city around the world. People facing social exclusion, youth unemployment, lack of participation, who may or may not have the right to vote. But amongst these challenges, we see young people like Shrenyat emerging as community leaders. At age 21, she was able to mobilise her community to tackle that threat of eviction, and she and I worked together on creating a public space in her community that not only resolved the flooding issues, but reduced that threat of eviction. This was a project initiated by young people in Cambodia. It was supported by young people in Australia, and it was delivered by the community together. And it is these kinds of projects with young people working together to support other young people that are driving change in cities around the world. I really believe that young people are the key to the solution. So as we think today around the manifesto, around this great declaration that we have around what cities should be, let's also consider what ways we can improve the participation of young people and how this is delivered. Who are the youth leaders already existing in our community that we can empower to make change? People like Shrenyat. And particularly, how can we mobilise older generations to work together with young generations? Youth issues are not just youth issues, they're everyone's issues. So how can we work together in mentoring so that we can learn and build capacity? So my 1 minute for change, which is actually now 10 seconds of change to summarise, is that I think that people are the greatest, most creative resource that we have to shape and improve our neighbourhoods. And what young people need is in fact not more strategies and resolutions, although those have a place, but it's simply an opportunity to be involved. And I believe if we give the voice and the platform to young people, then change will happen by itself. Thanks.
Thanks, Lucinda. Okay, we've had perspectives from Brazil. We've had insight into Cambodia. Which continent haven't we visited yet? Africa. Delighted to welcome Henry Foya, the Minister of Lands and Housing from Malawi. We heard about how young people are full of idealism. I suspect Henry in his job has to be full of pragmatism as well. So I'd be interested to hear your views, Henry.
Thank you very much, Moderator, Your Worship the Mayor, and all other distinguished participants. I was informed that we were supposed to be 2 ministers up here tonight. Unfortunately, the other minister could not make it. And while it is regrettable that he could not make it, I wish to take it as a blessing in disguise, because the presence of that other minister, who happens to be from Europe, could have had the potential of shifting the spotlight from the third world and from Africa in particular. I say this because the rate of urbanization in Africa is quite phenomenal. And in that regard, Africa does need special attention in terms of identifying possible solutions to the problems which have been brought about by this high rate of urbanization. Having said that, Mr. Moderator, allow me to go to my prepared text. And I wish to start by saying, when faced with a looming challenge, our ancestors in Africa used to gather under the big village tree to examine the looming crisis and together work out a common strategy to avoid or to mitigate the negative effects of the crisis. This practice of banging heads together, embedded in our traditions, finds its expression in the Malawi adage that says, one head cannot carry a roof. Today, as we embrace the urban future and faced with the challenge of rapid urbanization and the urbanization of poverty, it is right and proper that we go back to the wisdom of our ancestors and come together to exchange knowledge, ideas, and experiences. We have come together to influence policies, thoughts, and practices, to deliberate and decide on actions to address a common issue, and to establish networks and a platform for working together in partnerships and for pulling together. By the mid-20th century, 3 out of 10 people on the planet lived in urban areas. Today, half the world's population lives in urban areas, and by the middle of this century, all regions will be predominantly urban, with Africa being the fastest growing urban region. We know that the urban future is here with us. We also know that there are challenges which are as follows. 1, in Africa and many developing countries, urban expansion is often characterized by informality, illegality, and unplanned settlements. Specifically, urban growth has been strongly associated with poverty and slum growth. Secondly, our cities are divided cities. Divided in terms of income inequality, space inequality, inequality of opportunities, especially for the growing youth population, and inequality in access to social services such as health and education. And thirdly, our cities are increasingly being exposed to disasters, including the vagaries associated with climate change. The convergence of urbanization and climate change threaten economies, physical infrastructure, public health, quality of life, and social stability. Should the urban future be a cause for alarm? The answer to this question depends on the decisions we make today, including those of the Manifesto for Cities that we elaborate as we move towards a global urban agenda for Habitat 3. We have enough reasons to ensure that urbanization is sustainable because we do not have a choice to do otherwise. Cities are therefore important for the following reasons. 1, cities contribute disproportionately to the GDP. For example, in Malawi, my country, cities account only for 20% of the population and less than 5% of the land area, but they contribute up to 65% of the GDP of the country. Cities have the infrastructure, technology, skills, physical assets, and human capital necessary for economic growth and poverty reduction. Cities are centers of education, employment, enterprise, and innovation. Cities are centers of politics, culture, and social cohesion. Cities are centers of excellence in the provision of social services. Cities generate a disproportionate amount of revenue for government in national taxes, as I've already said. Cities are engines of national development. If we take the right decisions, we have the right and effective policies that promote sustainable urbanization, we will ensure that urbanization becomes a vehicle for poverty reduction and the attainment of the Millennium Development Goals. For this reason, we need to underscore the need to plan our cities properly, because well-planned cities are the ones that can make the urban future truly sustainable. Let me remind the gathering here that if we do not take the right decisions today, and if we do not have the right policies, we run the risk of condemning more urban dwellers to live in poverty and to making the cities fail to fulfill their potential for poverty reduction. We run the risk of creating cities that instead of playing their role as the engines for economic growth, are sites of deprivation, social exclusion, crime, and instability. We run the risk of creating cities that impede environmental sustainability because of large ecological footprints and their significant contribution to climate change. A sustainable urban future is only possible through the fostering of partnerships at all levels involving the international community, governments at all levels, private sector, academia, and professionals, as well as urban dwellers, including women and youth. We need to commit ourselves to take action to change cities, each one fully playing their part. The partnerships which the World Urban Campaign seeks to foster are fundamental to these efforts. At the national level, national urban forums would provide the platform for such partnerships. In Malawi, where a national urban forum has now been in existence for the past 5 years, we have seen how the engagement of partners ranging from politicians, government officials, private sector, academia, the media, and the slum dwellers themselves is contributing to policy reforms for the urban sector. While urbanization rates are highest in sub-Saharan Africa, it is a region with limited resources to deal with rapid urbanization, a process requiring high levels of capital investment and technical resources. In Africa, the proportion of total donor funding for urban needs is 2 to 12% of their total assistance in the region. There is no doubt that this proportion must increase if we have to attain sustainable urbanization. However, if increased investment is critical, even more critical is the urgent need to find better mechanisms for providing the poor with housing, water, and sanitation. Government commitment and leadership is fundamental to achieving sustainable urbanization. The challenge will be to turn this political will into concrete commitments and action for the urban sector. This will then have to be translated into national policies and priorities, as well as concrete budgetary commitments to support sustainable urbanization. Key to managing sustainable urbanization are local governments. There is no doubt that local authorities are the frontline actors in finding local answers to these challenges. With many countries adopting decentralized frameworks, the local authorities now have a key role to manage urbanization. At the root of many of the challenges in addressing urbanization and urban poverty is weak local government. Many local authorities, especially in the developing world, do not have adequate staffing, technical skills, or financial capital to tackle existing urban problems, let alone new challenges generated by rapid urbanization. It is simply impossible to keep up with the infrastructure and service needs of rapidly growing populations. Greater attention will therefore have to be paid to institutional strengthening and capacity development of local authorities. Finally, to begin to address the challenges of the urban future, there is no better space to start out on this exciting but challenging journey than this forum, composed of those of us who believe in the fact that it is possible for the planet to urbanize sustainably. Above all, what is required is a self-reliance of the people and their engagement in the urbanization process, the political will of leaders and the expertise of the professionals, practitioners, and academia to lead the knowledge construction and the sound implementation of policies and programs within a transparent governance framework and strong institutions. Today, we have the opportunity to decide to do something. This World Urban Campaign, and indeed Habitat 3, will be meaningful only if we can use these platforms to begin to truly change the cities, to resolve to strengthen working together through partnerships, and to an awakening of the urban challenges and opportunities before us. Let us all be the city changers. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you, Ms. Moderator.
Thank you very much. Pragmatic, but also upbeat in a way. And now we've heard from Africa, from an East Asian perspective, and Brazil. Let's bring it home. Let's hear from a Neapolitan perspective and invite Mr. De Magistris, the mayor of Naples, to talk about this from an Italian, a Neapolitan, a European perspective.
Grazie, innanzitutto vi porgo un caloroso benvenuto nella mia amata città. Ho ascoltato con molto interesse i contributi dei nostri amici di San Paolo, dell'Australia e dell'Africa e vorrei partire da una riflessione del sindaco della città d'Europa che ha il più alto numero di bambini e di giovani in Europa. Io sono sindaco da un anno e posso dire che i consigli più intelligenti me li hanno dati i bambini della mia città, quando mi scrivono le lettere, quando li vado a trovare nelle scuole, perché sono molto essenziali e molto chiari. Noi in Italia abbiamo capito che lo strumento migliore per sconfiggere le mafie e quindi rendere le città più sicure è quella di fare una rivoluzione culturale. Se uno va in un carcere minorile della mia città e interroga i ragazzi del perché hanno commesso un reato, ti rendi conto che per troppo tempo tutti noi, la società, non è riuscita a creare delle alternative credibili. Se chiedi ma tu perché hai fatto un furto, hai fatto una rapina, in genere ti rispondono perché dovevo comprarmi un cellulare, dovevo comprarmi una moto, dovevo comprarmi un abito più bello. Quindi evidentemente il modello culturale dell'avere è diventato più importante dell'essere, cioè conti rispetto a quanto hai, non rispetto a chi sei. E secondo me, se un ragazzo nella vita incontra la letteratura, l'arte, la poesia, la musica e la cultura, non potrà fare delle scelte sbagliate. Vi racconto due episodi. Noi abbiamo un teatro molto importante, il Teatro San Carlo, che è del 1737, è un teatro che, devo dire, in città era considerato un po' elitario, un po' dell'elite della città, la borghesia. Noi abbiamo voluto far conoscere maggiormente il teatro nei quartieri popolari. All'inizio abbiamo deciso di fare la Bohème di Puccini proletaria e portarla nei quartieri più popolari. All'inizio e far partecipare come attori e attrici i ragazzi della nostra città. All'inizio non volevano, perché la musica lirica per un giovane di 17, 18, 20 anni è qualcosa di lontano. Invece li abbiamo fatti avvicinare, li hanno fatti avvicinare a quest'opera, hanno fatto una scuola di formazione per 3 settimane, è andata benissimo in un quartiere di Napoli che si chiama San Giovanni. La cosa più bella che ho ascoltato dopo che è stata fatta questa rappresentazione teatrale in un quartiere popolare, fatto anche dagli attori ragazzi del territorio, quando alla fine ci hanno detto: io dopo aver fatto questa esperienza tornavo a casa e per radio cercavo la musica lirica. Quindi io credo che chi incontra la cultura, chi incontra la bellezza, come diceva Dostoevsky, e come sono molto d'accordo che diceva l'amico di San Paolo, dell'occupazione degli spazi pubblici. Faccio un altro esempio. Io sono diventato sindaco da un anno, 3 mesi fa ho deciso, in modo difficile perché non tutti erano d'accordo, di rendere pedonale il lungomare della mia città. Sono 5 chilometri di lungomare. A Napoli erano circa 100 anni che le persone non avevano mai più ascoltato il mare nella mia città, perché quando andavano su quella strada ascoltavano solamente le macchine che andavano a 80 km/h, smog e rumori. Se io chiedevo a mio figlio: tu il mare dove lo vedi? Mi diceva: lo vedo a Capri, lo vedo a Sorrento, lo vedo in altri posti. In città vedevano il mare come una cartolina. Quello spazio pubblico oggi è occupato con molta creatività dai cittadini, ognuno con le proprie idee. C'è l'artista di strada che suona, c'è quello che fa teatro, c'è quello che fa musica, quello che fa pizza, quello che va in bici, quello che va col pattino, quello che va con lo skateboard, ma soprattutto hai creato un luogo di socialità, che è la cosa più bella, non è solo un fatto di star meglio a camminare a piedi, è un luogo sociale. Io credo che le città, ad esempio, in un momento di crisi, non tutti possono permettersi di andare in villeggiatura. Se le città diventano dei luoghi dove tu puoi stare bene, puoi camminare, puoi circolare e fai anche più sicurezza. Io ho fatto per tanti anni il magistrato prima di fare il sindaco e anche da magistrato non ho mai pensato che la sicurezza delle città deriva se tu metti più poliziotti, più militari nelle strade. La sicurezza se noi cittadini andiamo nelle strade, le occupiamo con le nostre idee, con la nostra fantasia, con le nostre iniziative e anche per realizzare delle economie dal basso. Io ad esempio penso, oggi in un momento di crisi, che le crisi economiche sono anche delle opportunità. Per troppo tempo abbiamo pensato, molti hanno pensato, che il capitale economico fosse più importante del capitale umano. I grandi cambiamenti mondiali non li fanno i soldi, questa è la mia opinione, ma lo fanno le persone. Allora, se noi riusciamo a capire che le persone nel mondo si possono unire per il cambiamento, riusciamo a ridurre le disuguaglianze e considerare che la diversità tra di noi è una ricchezza. Io da ieri che ho fatto una serie di incontri con molti sindaci del mondo e devo dire sono rimasto entusiasta perché ho visto che molte complessità, molti problemi, molte opportunità sono identiche. Quindi noi sindaci, chi rappresenta le comunità, che vede ogni giorno negli occhi il dramma, i problemi, i desideri e i sogni, siamo quelli che se ci mettiamo insieme possiamo creare una connessione che è anche fatta di emozioni e di sentimenti. Perché senza passione, senza sentimenti, senza cuore, senza coraggio non si può andare molto lontano. Io non penso che noi dobbiamo aspettare che qualcuno dall'alto ci risolva i problemi o ci debba sempre dare un aiuto. Se ci sono gli aiuti economici ben vengano, ma io credo che con tante esperienze in tante parti del mondo, soprattutto del sud del mondo, ci vengono oggi degli esempi anche di democrazia dal basso che noi ad esempio in una città come Napoli, che è una città europea ma è sempre stata una città che guarda con molta attenzione al Sud, siamo pronti ad accogliere. Quindi io sono molto contento di ospitare un'esperienza così importante perché ho molto soprattutto da ascoltare e da imparare e speriamo che in questi giorni anche la nostra città vi possa consegnare un po' di emozioni. Chiudo dicendo questo. Quando vedo le statistiche, si fanno le statistiche del mondo delle città più vivibili, molto spesso nei parametri delle statistiche si vede che cosa? Se il tram o l'autobus o la metro arriva un minuto prima o un minuto e mezzo dopo o 2 minuti prima. Mi chiedo, ma nei parametri di vivibilità si contano anche le emozioni di una città? La capacità di una città, per esempio, di avere anche dei luoghi di maggiore socialità, di avere degli spazi pubblici, di avere una contaminazione tra culture, di saper far star bene delle religioni insieme. Io credo che noi dobbiamo un po' più riscoprire in questo momento storico la globalizzazione delle persone nella loro complessità. Abbiamo un po' troppo pensato nei decenni scorsi alle merci. Se pensiamo che nel 2012 le merci possono andare libere da Hong Kong a Napoli, le persone non possono spesso andare libere dalla Libia a Napoli, ma devono chiedere un permesso di soggiorno e per poterlo avere devono dimostrare magari di avere un posto di lavoro. Cioè significa non puoi venire nella mia città. Io personalmente lo trovo assurdo. Grazie.
Great words, inspiring words. And one thing that you said towards the end that interested me was this parameter of livability and what it means. I think it is subjective and to a degree, but it's a very interesting question about what makes a city livable. Maybe you could think about that for you as individuals. What makes a city livable for you? Right, moving on, to another part of the world again, back to South America. Aníbal Gaviria, the mayor of Medellín in Colombia. Over to you.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Un saludo muy cordial para el alcalde de Nápoles, nuestro alcalde anfitrión. Agradecerle a él y a la ciudad de Nápoles que nos ha recibido con tanta amabilidad. De alguna manera, ahora en la reunión y en la mesa redonda de alcaldes de ciudades del mundo que están reunidos aquí en Nápoles en el marco del 6º Foro Urbano Mundial, hablábamos y hablamos sobre lo que es la agenda del futuro para las ciudades. Y allí yo mencionaba que, por supuesto, una invitación a pensar y a analizar sobre el futuro de las ciudades tiene que ser un análisis primero sobre el pasado. ¿Qué hemos hecho bien como ciudades? ¿Qué hemos hecho en forma regular o deficiente? ¿Y qué hemos dejado de hacer? Y en ese orden de ideas, nosotros creemos que, por ejemplo, las ciudades han creado sin ningún lugar a duda, riqueza. Han creado, por supuesto, también conocimiento. Han generado grandes y trascendentales obras de infraestructura. Pero, por supuesto, lo que debe ser los retos hacia el futuro es lo que las ciudades hemos dejado de hacer o hemos hecho deficientemente. Y uno de los aspectos que las ciudades hemos hecho en forma deficiente es, creando riqueza, la distribución de la misma. Hay una enorme brecha y hay una enorme deficiencia, una enorme deuda social de las ciudades en la distribución de esa riqueza. Otro frente en el cual las ciudades, por supuesto, tienen una deuda y un desarrollo deficiente es en el frente de la sostenibilidad, que de alguna manera es parte de la convocatoria a la cual nos invita el Sexto Foro Urbano Mundial. Y el otro frente, que de alguna manera comparto con los comentarios que hacía el alcalde de Nápoles, es el frente de la protección y el respeto por la vida, que de alguna forma se une con los dos anteriores, porque nosotros estamos convencidos en Medellín, y en el caso mío específico como alcalde de la ciudad, una ciudad de 2,5 millones de habitantes en Colombia, en América Latina. Nosotros creemos que no hay más grande desigualdad que los factores que atenten contra la vida. Y si bien en muchas ocasiones se mide, por supuesto, por el factor de Gini o se mide por el ingreso, la desigualdad entre los habitantes de un país o de una ciudad, nosotros creemos que no hay mayor desigualdad que haya ciudades que tienen índices de homicidios con las violencias urbanas de 250 homicidios por 100.000 habitantes y ciudades que tengan un homicidio por 100.000 habitantes. Esa no es 3 o 4 o 5 o 6 veces una diferencia de Producto Interno Bruto o de Producto Interno Per Cápita, sino que es una diferencia de 250 veces en la protección y en la valoración de la vida, que debe ser, por supuesto, la primera y la gran prioridad de cualquier sociedad y de cualquier gobierno. En ese orden de ideas, nos parece, y además así lo hemos hecho desde Medellín, que avanzar en una ciudad que proteja más la vida y en una ciudad que construya más posibilidades para el respeto por la vida es la ruta que hemos seguido y recomendamos. Medellín, como desafortunadamente muchos la conocen en el mundo y la siguen conociendo por falta de información, fue una ciudad que en la década de 1990 a la década del año 2000 tuvo algunos de los índices de violencia urbana más grandes del mundo. Y ahora hablaba yo de hasta 250 homicidios por 100.000 habitantes y nosotros llegamos a tener 380 homicidios por 100.000 habitantes. Prácticamente una guerra no declarada. Pues a través de un verdadero milagro, de una transformación que a nosotros nos provoca gran orgullo, la ciudad hoy ha avanzado a niveles de 35 a 40 homicidios por 100.000 habitantes, es decir, 10 veces menos que en la década del 90 al 2000. Por supuesto, algunos se preguntarán, ¿y 35 a 40 es un índice que deja satisfecho al alcalde Aníbal Gaviria de Medellín? De ninguna manera, de ninguna manera. Tenemos que seguir avanzando y tenemos que tratar de bajar esa cifra a la mitad y después a la mitad de la mitad y así sucesivamente. Pero pocas ciudades en el mundo, lo decimos con orgullo, pueden mostrar esa transformación en el transcurso de 15 o 18 años. Entonces, la pregunta seguramente que algunos de ustedes se harán, ¿y cómo se ha hecho? Se ha hecho a través de un elemento que es sustancial y que puede, de alguna manera, si hay el conveniente ejercicio político, multiplicarse en otras ciudades y regiones, y es a través de la combinación de varios buenos gobiernos sucesivos sintonizados. Esa es una fórmula que yo estoy seguro que no dará malos resultados en cualquier ciudad, pero es muy difícil de alcanzarla políticamente. Eso hemos tenido en Medellín en los últimos 12 años. Y a través de intervenciones urbanas enfocadas a lo social y a la protección de la vida, colegios, bibliotecas, jardines infantiles en las zonas más deprimidas de la ciudad, unidades deportivas, culturales, urbanismo social que ahora traducimos en un concepto de urbanismo cívico-pedagógico, con una gran participación ciudadana para darle legitimidad a la institucionalidad. Esa es la fórmula. Por supuesto, en un minuto me queda muy difícil expresárselas en completo, pero mañana, de las 2 a las 4 de la tarde, vamos a tener la presentación completa de lo que nosotros consideramos el milagro, la metamorfosis de Medellín. Una ciudad que pasó del dolor, del agobio, del dolor, a la luz de la esperanza, y de la luz de la esperanza quiere pasar a la vida. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias. Okay, let's move on again and bring in another part of the world, North Africa. Delighted to welcome the Mayor of Agadir. Mayor Cabbage, over to you.
Merci, mesdames et messieurs. Mais tout d'abord, je voudrais féliciter le maire de Naples pour avoir rendu le front de mer aux citoyens. Et je dois dire que c'est un combat qu'on a mené aussi à Agadir. Et aujourd'hui, nous avons aussi 5 kilomètres de promenade en front de mer sans voiture. Et c'est là où je vous rejoins tout à fait. Les espaces publics doivent être investis et doivent devenir aussi des lieux de rencontre et de mixité. Et c'est pour moi fondamental. Et je vous en félicite. Pardon?
Pouvez-vous parler un peu plus fort dans le...
Ah, le micro? D'accord. Bien. On va parler plus fort. Alors, si vous n'avez pas entendu, je félicite le maire de Naples pour la promenade piétonne. Et bravo. Alors, je crois qu'effectivement, l'histoire de l'humanité s'est construite autour de groupes humains. Aujourd'hui, on sait très bien qu'il y a plus de 50% de l'humanité qui vit dans les villes, mais des villes où se côtoient beaucoup d'inégalités. Alors, cette séance aujourd'hui est donc d'essayer de proposer, de réfléchir et de sortir avec un manifeste des villes, et je pense que c'est très important. Alors, on dit que l'avenir est l'avenir, mais elle peut aussi annoncer la fin de la civilisation, la fin de l'humanité, et c'est pour cela que ce manifeste est important, mais il ne doit pas rester un vœu pieux. Et le 19e siècle a eu son manifeste, et nous devons aujourd'hui militer pour un manifeste du 21e siècle, autour d'idées fortes, qui puissent annoncer une rupture avec un mode de vie, cette société du gaspillage et des inégalités dirigée par un capitalisme débridé. Je regrette que la ministre française ne soit pas là aujourd'hui, parce qu'ils sont confrontés aujourd'hui à un problème grave, c'est le problème du chômage, d'entreprises qui gagnent de l'argent et qui pourtant mettent au chômage un certain nombre d'ouvriers et de cadres. Et je crois que la question de l'emploi est effectivement une question fondamentale. Alors, ce matin, vous savez, quand je suis venu ici, le chauffeur de taxi, on lui a dit qu'on allait au forum, l'urbanisme, la ville, et il a fait cette réflexion. Il nous a dit que pour faire avancer la ville, il faut changer les élus. Mais je ne pense pas qu'il parlait du maire de Naples. Hein. Il parlait en général. Et je dois vous dire que c'est une question qu'on retrouve dans beaucoup de pays. Chez nous, au Maroc, beaucoup disent les élus ne font pas ce qu'ils doivent faire. Et je crois que cette question-là tourne autour d'une question de fond qu'on retrouve dans le manifeste, c'est la question de la gouvernance. C'est la question centrale de la réussite du futur. Alors, nous les maires, nous sommes en contact avec les citoyens au quotidien, qui ont des exigences de plus en plus fortes. Et l'État peut être parfois un frein au développement local. C'est pour cela qu'au Maroc, nous espérons qu'on va s'engager, nous l'espérons, dans une approche nouvelle qui est fondée sur la décentralisation, la déconcentration et un réel pouvoir aux élus locaux dans le cadre d'une vraie régionalisation. Et là, nous avons des exemples européens avec l'Italie, avec l'Espagne, la France, tous ces pays qui ont des histoires différentes, mais qui en fait sont allés tous vers cette régionalisation. Alors, effectivement, en tant que ville, nous avons essayé, ces dernières années, depuis que je suis élu en 2003, de régler un certain nombre de problèmes de fond. Alors, on parlera bien sûr des services de base, l'eau, l'assainissement, les voiries, l'éclairage, la collecte, la propreté, tout ça. Nous commençons à régler tous ces problèmes-là. La proximité, comme disait Monsieur le maire, la culture, parce qu'aujourd'hui, les jeunes ne peuvent plus être des jeunes qui traînent dans les rues des villes. Nous avons des projets que nous avons lancés, c'est de grands espaces verts, des équipements sportifs et la culture, des maisons de quartier, et bien sûr aussi comment faciliter les déplacements. Alors dans ce manifeste et dans ces idées qui seront discutées au cours de ces jours-ci, il y a des thèmes qui reviennent, très généreux, mais des fois qui sont aussi détournés par manque de bonne gouvernance. Je donnerai quelques exemples dans mon pays. Il faut être... Quand on parle de ville inclusive, on parle de bidonville, eh bien, une politique peut être complètement détournée, et c'est le cas de notre pays où on parle d'une politique de ville sans bidonville. Et quand on fait le bilan, eh bien, on constate parce que, par faute justement d'un accompagnement social, d'un soutien aux populations qui sont dans une situation de grande précarité, eh bien, même si on leur offre des lots de terrain pour construire, s'ils n'ont pas les moyens, s'il n'y a pas les financements, eh bien, ce seront donc ce que j'appelle les spéculateurs qui reprendront ces terrains à leur profit. Une politique généreuse peut être détournée s'il n'y a pas une bonne gouvernance.
Mr. Mayor, 1 minute.
No, I'm sorry, you have a mistake. Je voudrais aussi parler de la question de l'environnement parce que c'est une question que l'on retrouve. Une politique, une ville écologique, durable. Et comme vous le savez, les changements climatiques sont là. Et aujourd'hui, dans des pays comme les nôtres, au niveau de l'habitat, eh bien, on ne respecte pas un certain nombre de normes qui permettraient donc d'avoir des habitations beaucoup plus économes en énergie. Et on abandonne aussi des expériences ancestrales, qui est l'utilisation des briques en terre. Eh bien, tout cela fait qu'aujourd'hui, s'il n'y a pas de politique forte dans ce sens-là, eh bien, nous n'aurons rien réglé. Il y a ces questions de planification des villes. Et là aussi, j'aimerais quand même dire une chose. J'ai entendu dire des grandes villes. Attention, il faut qu'il y ait des équilibres régionaux. Il ne faut pas aller vers ces villes de 10-15 millions d'habitants. Il vaut mieux avoir plusieurs villes. Une grande, bien sûr, Naples est une grande ville, mais vous avez autour d'autres villes de moindre importance. Et c'est excessivement important de ne pas aller vers ces mégapoles, comme on trouve beaucoup en Asie et déjà aussi en Afrique. Voilà un petit peu ce que je voulais donc dire. Et ce qui serait intéressant, c'est que, au niveau de ce forum, on parle, on prend des décisions, mais aussi il faudrait créer une instance de contrôle des pays, des villes, pour voir est-ce que effectivement ce qu'on propose, est-ce que ce manifeste évolue ou n'évolue pas, ou est-ce qu'il restera un vœu pieux comme l'a été le manifeste du XIXe siècle de Karl Marx. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that we set you all a very difficult challenge to try and explain the complexity of urbanization in a few minutes, and it simply can't be done. But one of the things that I'll take away from listening to those presentations is the focus on egalitarian approaches to urban planning. That came through loud and clear from all of you, and also the emphasis on public space. And these are things that every city can do. Every city has space. It's how do you make the most of that space. Please give our panel a warm round of applause. Thank them. They've come a long way to be here. Okay. So we're going to switch our panel now. I'll invite this wonderful panel to take their leave of the stage and bring a new set of faces up. So thank you very much. And I'd like to invite Nicholas Yu, Eugenie Birch, Matt Benyon, Patrick Corral, Josip Roig, Peter Goetz, and Louise Cox. If you are all here, wonderful. Please come up and take a seat. Before we start this panel, we've got a special treat, a presentation from Joan Close, a man who needs little introduction from me. I'm sure you know him by reputation, and Dr. Close is going to give us a short talk.
Okay, thank you very much, dear friends. I would like to take this opportunity to officially announce and launch the recently established advisory group of gender issues to further strengthen its focus on gender mainstreaming and awareness of gender issues in UN Habitat. I am very pleased to announce that we have here with us the recently elected chairperson of this group, which is Madame Aminata Traoré, which is the former minister of Mali, and which I like to invite to be at my side. And also we have different members of the Gender Advisory Group to the UN. You have elected your vice chair in the person of Thomas Bull, representing the government of Norway, and really I am looking forward in working together with this fantastic group. As I said in the opening ceremony, I think that we all, the UN Habitat family, should be very thankful to the group of women that are fighting for the rights of gender and which are present all over the world. And I would like also to thank the presence of Madame Jan Peterson. Please, can you also come to here? Yes. Can we, all the members of the panel, can you come here in the front line? Just to be here and to be officially recognized as the new advisory group on gender in UN Habitat. I would like now the chair to present the members and to say a few words, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Directeur. C'est un grand honneur pour nous d'être invités à contribuer à la réalisation des objectifs de l'ONU Habitat à travers ce conseil consultatif composé de femmes mais aussi d'hommes. Et nous sommes animés par la volonté d'assumer pleinement notre rôle de femmes mais de citoyennes à part entière dans un monde qui est en pleine ébullition, mais aussi en crise, comme cela vient d'être dit. Je sais, comme le directeur l'a dit, qu'il s'agit, avec la mise en place de ce conseil consultatif, de souligner davantage le rôle des femmes dans la transformation des cités et de renforcer l'UN Habitat dans la poursuite de ses objectifs. Je voudrais, si vous le permettez, ajouter une note personnelle parce que je viens d'écouter le panel. J'ai suivi avec une attention particulière tout ce qui a été dit et je m'inscris, je me reconnais en tout cas dans le discours du maire d'Agadir parce que je viens d'un pays, M. John Klaus l'a dit, je viens du Mali. Je viens du Mali et je suis né à Bamako, dans une ville qui est aujourd'hui affectée par une situation que vous connaissez tous. J'aimerais bien que la crise soit au cœur du débat. Et il faut inscrire ce forum de UN Habitat dans son contexte, qui est un contexte marqué par de profonds bouleversements. Et le taximan n'a pas seulement raison de dire qu'il s'agit d'une question de leadership, il s'agit aussi d'une question de leadership, mais aussi de système. Dans quel système économique nous sommes? Parce que l'explosion des villes, les mégapoles, ne sont pas le résultat de politiques délibérées. Mais je crois qu'elles résultent surtout de bouleversements profonds que nous n'avons pas su questionner. Et hier, nous avons dit dans cette ville que les hommes, en fait, ont échoué. Les hommes ont échoué dans la mise en œuvre de modèles de développement et de processus de démocratisation dont ils ont voulu garder la direction. La non-participation des femmes doit être un défi à relever en termes de solidarité. Solidarité nord-sud, solidarité entre hommes et femmes. C'est par ces mots que je voudrais conclure en disant qu'un autre monde est possible, un autre développement urbain est possible, mais dans le cadre d'un ordre économique mondial plus juste. Merci.
Merci. Merci. That's a present. Okay. Thank you. Hey, photo.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clow. And there was a good connection there, too, to what we were talking about in the previous panel with egalitarian approaches, not just social inclusion between different classes, but obviously, and it was worth spelling it out, between the sexes. Okay, let's move on. As I mentioned at the start, I mean, one of the main reasons that we're here is to discuss this handy guide to urbanization, the Manifesto for Cities, and we've assembled a few of the driving forces behind it to talk through its rationale, what's inside, and what they want to come out of this. So we're going to hear from them all, and I'm essentially going to ask them each the same question, which is, why are you here? What's the most important message in this manifesto that you want to set out, and what do you want to happen next? Nicholas, let's start with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good evening, all. Why am I here, and why am I participating in a group of people who put together this manifesto? Well, many of you here know me, and I've been working with UN Habitat for over 25 years. I recently retired about 2 years ago. And I can say that for 25 years, I devoted my career to mainstreaming the urban agenda. It was, for 20 of those 25 years, very much an uphill battle. People would simply talk about all forms of development, but they would not, or they would refuse the notion that sustainable development has a spatial dimension. And that spatial dimension is more and more dominated by the objective and subjective dimensions of the city. But what has changed in the last 5 years is a tremendous awareness worldwide on behalf of all stakeholders, be they elected politicians, decision makers, parliamentarians, business people, of the importance of cities. But there is one gigantic piece of homework that remains to be done, and that is, how do we make the city not just one amongst other issues that need to be discussed for sustainable development of our planet and our societies, but the central issue. And I think we are on the verge of achieving that. We have seen the first steps taken in Rio, but the question is it enough? And the reason why I am here today promoting this manifesto is because it isn't enough. We have to have a global urban agenda that firmly places the city at the center of the social, economic, environmental debate, at the center of the debate on governance, at the center of the application of all the promises that technology can bring to us in the future. So even though I spent 25 years of my life working on this, I am willing to devote still quite a bit of my time and my energy in my second life to promoting this manifesto. And perhaps to equally important aspect is that this manifesto is a first step, a very important first step, but after this we need to come up with a concrete urban agenda that will provide the necessary guidance, the necessary inspiration for people, as we heard from the previous panel, for people and communities to be able to take charge of their own destiny and to become city changers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nicholas. Eugenie Birch, what would you like to say to complement what Nicholas has already said?
Good evening. And Nicholas is always a hard act to follow, as is Dr. Close and the women. At any rate, I'm here because you're here. I'm here because at one time I was a youth. At one time I worked for a local authority. I'm a member of civil society. I'm an academic. I was a member of a labor union. My husband's in the private sector. I am a professional, and I am a woman. You all fit these categories, one of you and many of you in these categories. And I'm here because I believe in what you believe. I believe that cities are positive places. I believe that cities are engines of growth. I believe cities are centers of opportunity. And I believe cities are havens for knowledge production. And I believe that we're here because we know this is true. We know that there are best practices that we can share about how cities work. We know that many of you have created good policies that make cities work well, and we want to share those. And finally, we want to measure how well we do as we govern and create our cities. And we know that the battle for a sustainable future is going to be won, not lost, won in cities. That's why I'm here.
Matt Benyon from Arcadis, what brings you here and what would you like us to focus on?
Well, I'm here representing Arcadis, who, as a professional services firm, we believe very passionately in sustainability by design, in making improvements in the quality of life. And we believe that we have a fundamental position and role to play in really driving that agenda. In the advice that we give our clients, the solutions that we bring forward, and indeed the impact that we have on the communities in which we live and work within. I think one of the most exciting things for me in the manifesto, and one of the areas I really wanted to highlight, is, as we heard earlier, that actually urbanization can be a really positive force. That's often hard to believe when what we see around us is often poverty, pollution, inequality, and as I say, that can make that a very difficult message. But if we look back in history, cities are where communities of people come together, share ideas, exchange knowledge, and really drive innovation. And I think the statistics, as we heard earlier, demonstrate that there is absolutely an economic benefit in urbanization. Now, our job is to harness that. Our job is to make sure that in driving that positive growth, we don't fall into some of the historic traps, and we do ensure that growth is equitable, that commercial gains stay as far as possible within the communities and the ecosystems in where they've been created, and equally that consumption, probably one of the biggest challenges that we face, is managed to a level that's sustainable. And I believe the manifesto sets out a very clear agenda for that. I think that what's really exciting is the manifesto is very clear and shares our belief that neither the private sector nor the public sector have a monopoly on the good ideas here, and both need to come together to solve this challenge. And we're very excited about playing our role in helping to set the agenda, set the manifesto, and play our part in its development.
Thank you, Matt. Josef Roig, let me introduce you. What interests you, excites you about the manifesto? What would you like us to be thinking about?
Well, probablemente voy a hablar en español hoy. La primera cosa es, bueno, ha habido una serie de intervenciones por parte del alcalde de Nápoles que he encontrado bastante provocativas y algún comentario haré. Institucionalmente soy secretario general de Gobiernos y Ciudades Locales Unidas y, por tanto, yo creo que respecto al manifiesto estamos de acuerdo en el contenido. En CGLU y en el último congreso también aprobamos un manifiesto 2030 sobre las ciudades. Yo creo que compartimos el diagnóstico. Nos preocupa más en este momento casi el quién y el cómo. Esto es lo que nos preocupa más, porque yo creo que compartimos el diagnóstico. Y nos parece que la contribución de los gobiernos locales es fundamental. No estamos, y por eso estamos en este Partners Group, no estamos diciendo que el comportamiento de los gobiernos locales sea único y que pueda resolver todos los problemas. Precisamente queremos compartir esta actividad con el resto de niveles de gobierno y con la sociedad civil. Pero nos parece, y es una reivindicación que hacemos desde siempre, que los gobiernos locales no somos una NGO, somos gobiernos. Y por tanto tenemos una responsabilidad pública, una responsabilidad que yo creo que se ha demostrado muy claramente con la participación de los alcaldes. Algunos de vosotros han mencionado el tema del consumo. Cuando el alcalde de Nápoles decía que ha hecho una política para ver y escuchar el mar, esto es consumo, yo diría que es consumo improductivo. Italia está llena de inversiones en consumo improductivo. Gracias a esto tenemos toda esta historia, esta cultura, el arte, muchas cosas. A mí me gustaría que las ciudades se consideraran también no únicamente como motores de crecimiento productivo. Yo creo que nos hemos equivocado. El sistema económico nos ha llevado a considerar únicamente a las ciudades como un sistema de producción. Me gustaría que recogiéramos la idea también de las ciudades como un sistema de consumo y a veces incluso improductivo, que permite y genera oportunidades. Creo que lo que estamos asistiendo en este momento, y se ha mencionado respecto a los jóvenes, respecto a las mujeres, es que el sistema actual, las ciudades actualmente están limitando enormemente las oportunidades. Y a veces diría las oportunidades inesperadas, las expectativas. Si no hay expectativas en la ciudad, no vamos a resolver el problema de la urbanización y de la sociedad. Y para esto yo creo que tenemos que actuar conjuntamente. Me parece que un elemento clave, y en esto sé que vamos a encontrar la colaboración de UN Habitat. Sabemos que UN Habitat representa a los Estados. Sabemos que ha de haber una política urbana por parte de los Estados. Sabemos también que después de esta política urbana, cada una de las ciudades ha de establecer su visión, su estrategia. Y esta se ha de hacer sobre todo con los ciudadanos. La única manera de tener una visión y una estrategia realmente efectiva es tenerla con los ciudadanos. Y finalmente hay que implementar todo esto. Y aquí yo creo que otra vez algunos de los stakeholders que estamos aquí, no solamente los gobiernos locales, también la sociedad civil, las empresas tienen una responsabilidad enorme. Entonces, si logramos conjuntar un poco todos estos elementos que no son fáciles, quizá conseguiremos también que lo que se ha dicho aquí, la distribución de la riqueza sea un poco distinta. A mí, volviendo ya a un tema económico, me preocupa mucho que la distribución de la riqueza en este momento se produzca únicamente en función del empleo y la productividad cuando tenemos una población desempleada tan enorme. Debe haber algún otro sistema de distribución que nos permita continuar. Y yo creo que pasar únicamente a la distribución en el sistema de empleo va a ser muy difícil entonces de mantener la paz social, la cohesión social y conseguir unas ciudades de futuro que sean más equilibradas y más justas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roig. Peter Goetz, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening. I believe that the process of writing the manifesto allows the actors to get to know each other and to develop not just common goals, but synergies. The manifesto itself gives us all a stronger position from which to act during the Habitat 3 process. So, Nick, it is a good first step. For parliamentarians, the following key ideas included in the manifesto are particularly relevant. Empowerment of cities and communities to plan for and effectively manage challenges and change. Complete life, local economies. Participatory planning and deciding making. Parliamentarians are representatives of the people and as such carry a special responsibility. They are also granted special powers. Parliamentarians can be city changers. They can also encourage people to become city changers, and they can support people who already are city changers. On the one hand, parliamentarians pass legislations, which is in itself the most essential form of implementation of the goals of the Habitat Agenda. This is reflected in our slogan, good laws for a better habitat. On the other hand, parliamentarians control the budget of their country and are thus able to ensure that the necessary financial resources to achieve the objectives of the agenda are available. In the same way, they decide which projects receive financial priorities. Ladies and gentlemen, the parliamentarians and Habitat are convinced that the people who are elected locally know best what is good for their city. It is normally the officials of the municipalities and the mayors of cities who are closest to the citizens. We therefore want municipalities and cities to be governed by democratically elected local representatives in order for local representatives to become powerful city changers. Local planning, sovereignty, but also a strong local financial autonomy are required. Parliamentarians have powerful instruments with they can promote changes to which propose they are used is a matter of political will. I humbly ask all parliamentarians present to use their powers, help others to become city changers. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Peter. Last but not least, at the end, Louise Cox, if there's anything you would like to set out.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Good evening. I'm here representing the Habitat Professionals Forum, HPF, who are the architects, planners, surveyors, engineers, landscape architects, housing and water specialists, and representatives from women in informal employment. And the Habitat Professionals Charter of 2010 states that the role of human settlements professionals is to deliver a sustainable and equitable future. And our vision is to carry out this role based on the World Urban Campaign, and in particular to deal with the following 4 principles: social, economic and environmental harmony, pro-poor and inclusivity, heritage, culture and sense of place, the impacts of climate change and disasters. This has required changing practice and rapid action on the part of HPF members and their constituents, and including increasing partnerships and resources for innovative solutions and new approaches to urban development and management, often being catalysts for change whilst working with communities and governments to ensure that the community owns the projects or the project and feels comfortable with the outcomes. Because the city is for people, all people, and this must not be forgotten. Sometimes we forget that the city's for people, and I'm sorry, I want to emphasise that. And our charter is complementary to the Manifesto for Cities and its proposed global urban agenda. We want to be city changers, and as our motto says, the Habitat Professionals Forum is for sustainable cities. And we want to work with UN Habitat through the World Urban Campaign and the Manifesto to contribute significantly by the actual demonstration of projects to Habitat 3 in 2016. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Louise. Okay, I promised right at the beginning of this session that you would have the opportunity to ask questions. Now, we've got a wonderful brains trust here. If anybody has a question that they would like to pose, either just to set it out collectively or to one of the individuals on the panel, then this is your moment. This is your opportunity. If you would like to ask a question, put your hand up and the floor will be yours. Okay, lady down here. And someone's bringing a microphone to you just now. If you could introduce yourself at the start, that would be nice.
Hi, my name is Regina Pritchett. I'm a member of the YRO Commission. I work for the Land and Housing Campaign. And I'm curious how WUC, which is now sort of all of the habitat things are feeding into WUC. I'm curious what the relationship between the World Urban Campaign will be with the other sectors and how that relationship will be formed. It sounds like the manifesto, Nicholas, you mentioned that the manifesto is sort of the first step, and then there will be more concrete agenda setting. So I was wondering if you could talk about what that process would be like.
Nicholas?
Well, the World Urban Campaign is a campaign, first and foremost, but I think what the partners and what UN Habitat have been able to achieve in a relatively short period of time is to bring together almost all the stakeholders, the so-called Habitat Agenda partners, into one room to be able to see how we can leverage our resources, our outreach, in order to make a greater impact on the agenda forming process. So the World Urban Campaign is an open-ended forum, just like the World Urban Forum. In fact, the World Urban Campaign is, together with the World Urban Forum, perhaps the two main advocacy instruments for UN Habitat. And we welcome all actors, all stakeholders, to join the campaign. And there are several ways that you can join, and the best way to find out about that is to ask Christine Auclair, who's here, who's the she is the person in charge of the World Urban Campaign at Habitat. But it is open. We invite and we welcome all stakeholders to come and join us in this quest.
Okay, good question. Yeah, we've got a gentleman at the back.
My name is Dalo Jung. I'm from South Korea, working with the UNITA Associated International Training Center in Jeju Island, South Korea. My question is, as it is the first time for me to participate in Habitat event, and when I see the urban campaign, is it your concept that urban life is important, not the countryside life? I see many times that the villages in the countryside are as dilapidated and deserted as the desertation of urban cities. Wouldn't there be any balance between village sustainability and urban sustainability? Thank you.
It's a really good question. It's one that I was wondering about as the minister from Malawi was talking about cities being the engines of economic growth. Wouldn't it make a lot of sense to try and make the countryside also an engine of economic growth to create an equilibrium? Does anybody want to have a go at answering that? Eugenie, have a go.
I'll try. We are focusing on cities because of the majority of populations moving to or living in cities now or in the near future. However, cities will not survive without their hinterlands, and the hinterland is the rural area. How do we feed our cities is a question. How do we supply water to our cities? So both of these pieces of our society or of our geography are essential for a sustainable future. Our focus, as I said, is on cities because of the nature of the population growth, but we know that there is a very important synthesis that needs to occur between both, and that we need to equalize income and opportunity and so forth. But the reality is, in terms of economic engines, cities are the economic engines of our globe.
Time for one last question. There's a chap here with his hand up.
This is a question for Joseph Roach. I noticed that you said that local governments are not NGOs. I believe, and I think you would agree, that UN Habitat is very committed, does a great job at recognizing the importance of local governments and NGOs. But would you be suggesting that perhaps the UN system as a whole should be doing more to recognize the roles and responsibilities of local governments?
Me parece que he dejado claro que no, que el reconocimiento de los gobiernos locales como gobiernos no era nada contradictorio con reconocer el papel de las ONGs, pero sí que me parece que tenemos que reconocer que los gobiernos locales tienen otra forma de elección, incluso ojalá en todas partes fuera de elección democrática, y por lo tanto su papel es un poco distinto. Pero, como he dicho antes, yo creo que la colaboración con las ONG es importantísimo. Es evidente, por ejemplo, que en nuestro caso estamos trabajando en grupo como gobiernos locales para nuestra propia agenda urbana, pero esta agenda urbana la queremos inscribir también en ámbitos y en foros como este, en el que estamos colaborando con el resto de organismos en los que hay una actividad enormemente positiva por parte de muchas NGOs. Por ejemplo, en muchas de las operaciones de City-to-City Cooperation que los miembros de CGLU hacen a nivel internacional, estamos muy contentos de trabajar, por ejemplo, con Slum Dwellers International. Por tanto, la colaboración en muchos temas, en medio ambiente, en housing, en temas sociales, evidentemente ha de ser conjunta, y esto es lo que estamos pidiendo. Estamos pidiendo una mayor colaboración, incluso un análisis multi-stakeholder de los problemas, porque sabemos que la razón no la tenemos únicamente los gobiernos locales y que tenemos que compartir el diagnóstico, las soluciones con el resto de participantes y stakeholders de los problemas urbanos.
Great, thank you very much. We're out of time. Please give them a round of applause. And I'd like to invite our panel to leave the stage and bring up our three final guest speakers, Katerina, if she's here, and Esther and Elizabeth. And we're going to start this session by showing you a short video to introduce the theme.
What kind of world do you want for your children? And their children.
1 out of 6 lives in poverty. In cities, 1 out of 4 live in slums.
Cities consume 2/3 of our planet's resources.
Cities also brings opportunities.
Cities are the world's greatest assets to meet global challenges.
The future we want, the urban future we want.
It should be about social inclusion, safety,
prosperity, and environmental responsibility.
The battle for a sustainable future will be won or lost in cities.
How we plan, build, and manage our cities today.
It will determine our future.
So be a city changer.
Join 1 Minute for Change.
Join the World Urban Campaign.
What you were watching there was people that had filmed a response to the 1 Minute for Change challenge, inviting people to concentrate on the change that they would like to see. It's a very useful exercise to try and distill the change that you want to see down to 1 minute. And I invite you all, at some point during your time here at the forum, to visit the booth in the exhibition area and set yourself the challenge of going in there and nailing it in 1 minute, describing the change you want to see. It's because we're producing some really interesting content. And our three panelists here, I'm going to bring them in simply by asking them, maybe give them a bit more than 1 minute to elaborate on the change that they would like to see. Katerina, it's nice to bring another industry perspective in here from BASF. What's the change that you would like to see?
Yeah, hello everybody. Actually, I'm here not only representing BASF, but I'm speaking on behalf of the Urban Private Sector Advisory Board. That is an advisory board to UN Habitat. So I'm trying to give a bigger picture of the private sector perspective, understanding, of course, that the private sector is very diverse. But what unites us is that we are pretty excited about this manifesto. And there are two reasons for that. And the first one, we already touched upon, is that business is dependent on sustainable cities. I know we have just talked about the importance of rural areas, etc., and I do not want to dismiss that discussion. But we just have to face the reality that most business is happening in cities. for good reasons. Because cities provide the workforce, cities provide the markets, cities are the main source of innovation, a source of creativity. Because of this density in cities, there can be the challenge as well. We have a wonderful, wonderful concentration of great minds, a lot of interaction happening. And that's where the innovation comes from, that then drives economic growth and, of course, profit for the companies, to be honest. So we're excited about the manifesto because we want the cities to be sustainable, because we depend on them. Now, that's only one reason why we're excited. The other one is private sector must be an important partner in driving sustainable cities, and we have a lot to offer. We have the expertise in the companies. We have the structures that use these different minds, the different people, in order to find new solutions. We have the technical input. We have products. Any solution you can think of, if you have private sector partners in there, you will move forward. You will continue to grow, because that's what the business case forces the companies to do. We tend to look at that in a bit skeptical manner, but actually it is a strong driving force, including for sustainable cities. So if this manifesto is actually known in different companies, there's another aspect that we should not forget. Companies are organizations, but they're made up of people. And these people are employees, but not all the time. They're citizens. They're part of the community. They're women. We had the story before. Ginny started it. They're women, they're young people, they're active in community groups, they're members of the city. So if companies manage to get the message of the manifesto to their employees, and vice versa, we will have a multiplication of city changes. And if we keep multiplying the messages and get new people on board through the manifesto and other means, we will have a strong global urban agenda by 2016, in time for Habitat 3. So we're excited, and I hope you are as well.
Great. Thank you, Katerina. Esther, you've come from Kenya to speak to the meeting. What would you like to say?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. In my mind, when I hear about a manifesto, I see a commitment of a group of people that have a collective agenda. And in this case, I see a group of people all over the world that have a collective agenda to improve the urban development and to change the way we live. And in my mind, every day in my work, I work with poor women in many of the African countries. I'm a member of the Huayru Commission. And one thing that I know, and we have all had it since this World Urban Forum began yesterday, is that the increased inequality is making it very difficult for many of the people living in the cities to live. It is making it difficult for the poor women. It's making it difficult for the youth. But we also know from our experience that poor women have made tremendous advancement in organizing themselves into groups that have given solutions to the problems of the cities. And what we expect, particularly as Huayru Commission, is to see that the people who are living the problems of the city are members and former members in designing the solutions that will give us the sustainable urban development we are looking for. When we talk about ecological sustainability, we definitely know how women have been the drivers on ensuring proper consumption within the neighborhoods. When we talk about issues of conflict, we talk about issues of lack of peace. We do know how organized groups of women have been creating space for peace. And we cannot have an urban agenda that does not take peace and issues of conflict as an integral part of work. We know that in moving forward, we've had issues of urban planning come up and every time during this World Urban Forum as an agenda that is going to be a priority, particularly of the UN Habitat. And what we are hoping that the manifesto is going to bring the voices of grassroots women who are living poverty to be the part of the people that are going to be planning for these the urban cities that we are looking for. We want to formalize the role of grassroots women, of poor women living in the urban centers. But of course, a big important point that has come up, that we need to have a strong urban-rural linkage. There are no better people to provide this linkage and to show what it means to do this than poor women who live in both rural areas and urban cities. And we really are looking forward to see and to contribute to this urban agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you, Esther. Elizabeth, what's on your mind?
My name is Liz Blake. I'm from Habitat for Humanity International, and I am the only thing standing between you and a glass of wine. So I will be very, very brief. Habitat...
There's another 12 speakers after you. I've got them out the back.
Habitat is an NGO, and like Jeannie said, we're all part of a fabric of different parts of society. I am a supporter, and we are a member of the Wairo Commission, but I'm the mother of 3 white male sons. So the whole spectrum is covered, but we spent our summer in Kenya. At any rate, Habitat for Humanity is part of civil society here, but the blessing of being part of this group, 20th speaker, even though I am, is that there were 19 before, each speaking with a voice. And I think what you have heard is that we are speaking with different sides of a prism, perhaps, but we are really, truly all speaking with one voice. And unless we do that, we are irrelevant going forward, because not one of us, not the governments, not the NGOs, not the private sector, none of us can do it alone. So it is only together that we are able to work. Habitat's MO for working, however, is unlike other NGOs. We don't call our clients clients. We call them partners. So Habitat doesn't give anything away. We are a ministry of a hand up. So as we think about changing the urban dialogue and changing for an urban future, we need to look at everyone, including every member of the community, not as someone across a table who is homeless and lacks, but someone who is our partner with us in solving his future and our future. So unless we look at ourselves and every member of society as a partner, we're losing the opportunity that partnerships can create, which is stronger than any individuals. Habitat is also part of the NGO transition from rural to urban. There is a dialogue between rural and urban. There are some dichotomies. NGOs overwhelmingly put their resources in the rural up till now. And we will become irrelevant if we continue to do that, because more than half of the world is urbanizing, and as Habitat looks in its strategic planning process to a growth strategy, unless we have a relevant urban strategy, we are irrelevant. We might as well just shut our doors now. It's hard, though, because we've been rural for 30 years, as have a lot of other NGOs, as have a lot of government programs and corporate support processes. So that transition to urban is difficult. It's particularly difficult because if you have, as I did over my vacation, if you take a child of yours through an open sewer slum, it's not a comfortable place to be. You don't want to be there. And unless, however, each one of us does that on a regular enough basis that we know how our other human beings, our other brothers and sisters live, these are children living in open sewer slums. And unless we know that that is going on and we smell it and we feel it, we will not have the urgency to bring about the change, whether it's by 2016 or thereafter. We need that sense of urgency, and it is only by physically being there and being part of that brotherhood and sisterhood. Finally, I'd like to say I'm a lawyer by training. Please, Shakespeare was being ironic when he said kill the lawyers. He didn't really mean it. It was an illustration. But urban fabric is based upon cities, and it's based upon land, and there is nothing more complicated than land and land rights. It is the most difficult. If we think about what we want to do, when we go from being nomads, we want to put down roots. When we put down roots, it needs to be roots in our land. And so unless we take on the complexities of the land issues and work through them thoughtfully and systematically by enumerating and counting every person and assuming that a person living there has a legitimate right to live there or someplace else, that every citizen deserves, man, woman, and child, deserves a safe and decent place to live, unless we embrace that as a land concept, I'm afraid, again, even with a sense of urgency, we will not be able to accomplish the future that I think God is calling us collectively to do. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left. What other questions haven't yet been posed? What is still on your mind, unresolved, that you would like to ask? Any questions? No? Okay, well, I've got one. Liz invited us to think differently about the people living in cities and mentioned that she talks of them as clients. And during this discussion tonight, I've been thinking about the difference between an inhabitant and a citizen. Nicholas, do you have time to answer that question? What's the difference between an inhabitant and a citizen for you? Well, for you, how do you define the difference between an inhabitant and a citizen?
An inhabitant would be just like a consumer of a product. A citizen is one that tries to shape the product that he is going to consume.
Very good. Very good. Have you been asked that question before? Okay, well, in that case, let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for coming along and contributing so freely and so knowledgeably. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your time here in Naples and that you have the opportunity to exchange, talk, discuss, not just with people like you, but with people completely unlike you that might do something completely different, and that sets you thinking about possible alliances and possible collaboration. So thank you very much. Give yourself a round of applause, and we'll call it a night.